just share my screen really quick and we'll get started. Let me
Perfect.
just change the mode here. All right, so can you see everything okay?
Yep, thank you so much.
Okay, perfect, great. Well, great to be here. Thank you everybody for the opportunity to, to interact and to get, to discuss the emerging technologies today and how emerging technologies could transform your business. So to get started, I wanted to get a feel of who do we have in the audience, and I just want to make sure that we have this session as interactive, because what I'm going to offer today is an opportunity to look at the emerging technologies as basically a tool or an basically just some sort of kind of igniter that could help you think about where your business is going and how you can evolve your business with basically where the market is going. And as we can see, the market is very dynamic these days, so we need to be able to adapt, and we need to be able to drive our businesses basically in a very flexible yet competitive way. So to get started, I just wanted to make sure that I know who is in the audience and what questions you might have just before we get started, so that I could just try to address them during the session. Can we just do a quick maybe run, just maybe if you guys, whoever is interested in sharing basically what your industry is and where you're from, what your industry is, just something really quick so that we could make it more interactive and so that I could talk a little more about your industry if I have some experience in that. Anyone?
Let me help you out there,
Yeah.
Alla. We can call out some brave souls and get this more interactive. All right, participants, please don't get mad at me. I'm going to call out a few people so we can make this into a bit more interactive. Can we get KYC Consulting? Can you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Hello there. So just in case my little boy speaks in the background, I apologise in advance. So my name is Katrina Young and I work with corporates, small business owners. I run 2 consultancies. One is for marketing and digital transformation, and I help with upskilling, transferring digital assets into monetized workflows, systems, passive income for corporations and small business owners. And the consultancy is all about innovation, robotic process automation and business processes. So I'm very interested about your session today.
Perfect.
Yay,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, as most people say these days, it's while we're working from home. It's actually us, as our CEO would say, we're actually at home trying to work. So we understand. Don't worry about the noises that come out when when you're trying to work from home. Let's get someone else here. Vivian, can you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself? Thank you so much. Vivian,
of course, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Hello, nice to meet you, Alla. I'm Vivian. I'm
Nice to meet
working
you.
for Novartis. So I'm physician, that's my background, but right now I'm studying digital marketing. So that's why I'm here. And right now Novartis is working on going digital. So that's why all of my rooms are here with me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you
you
so
too.
much. Let's get one more person before we begin. Mariana, can you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself? Mariana? Oh, maybe she's not on. Let's get someone else then. Rafael. Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
I having problems with my internet here. Hi, my name is Mariana. I think it's easier to say Marianne. I'm Brazilian. And I work with Paulo, Daniel, Diego, Marcelo, and Franz here. So I work for Bemol Digital in Manaus, is a Brazil city. And now I'm in a career transition. I am a mechanical engineer, but now I'm working with technology, and I learn a lot in these days with you. So sorry, I'm having some problems with my internet.
Oh,
No, no
we can
worries.
hear
It's
you
part of
really well.
homework.
So
Thank
no worries.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Great. Should we get started?
Yes, Theo, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. And if anyone has any questions during the session, we can always, you can always interrupt me and we can talk about it. All right. So what I wanted to talk to you today about is a couple of things. So first of all, emerging technologies, and you see a lot of buzz about emerging technologies, innovation trends. The whole topic of innovation is huge. But when it comes to reality, and one thing that I um, I learned in the past number of years is that, emergent technology is something that you need to think about as a tool. When you look at industries and you look at different industries, and in the past 5 years, I've been working very closely with a number of customers across different industries. What I found is that, and I was looking at it from the perspective what SAP called IoT, Internet of Things, and which was really a number of different emerging technologies coming together to enable end-to-end use cases and end-to-end experiences. But when it comes to basically looking at it kind of cross-industry and cross-functionally, what you find is that it's the same type of use cases, same type of patterns that you see across different industries, and the use cases end up to be very similar. So one thing that I wanted to convey today is that one really important takeaway that I want you to think about at the end of the session and afterwards is, don't be shy looking at the industries, at other industries, and borrowing some ideas how emerging technologies could impact your business and your basically goals, the business models that you are trying to enable, as well as basically just wherever you are, whether you are on a business site or you are in transition as well. That's also kind of a good opportunity to think about basically where you can apply your experiences, where experiences come into place. It's always a good idea to basically look at what's going on in the market and don't be basically stuck where you are, just kind of looking inside your industry and to your competitive landscape, which is important, of course. So we'll talk a little bit about basically the trends that I'm seeing, just kind of some of the trends that might be relevant and important for this year. We'll talk about emerging technologies, and I'll show you some of the application of emerging technology that I've seen as patterns, as something that you can apply to a number of different industries and use cases in terms of technology, same technology or combination of emerging technologies. I'll share with you some best practices that I've seen both working with customers, innovative customers from different industries. And here we're talking about Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 customers. So really just, big global customers that SAP is typically working with, and how I've seen them drive innovation, and what I've seen work and where I see best practices. As well, I wanted to share with you how SAP is driving innovation for the company. And I think it's also very interesting and very something you can think about as potential applicable to your business, and some of the ideas that you could borrow. We'll talk about industry use cases, and I'll just show you, different industries which may or may not be relevant to your business. But again, I want you to look at it and think about what if, this idea or this technology could be taken and applied to my business problems, to something that I'm trying to drive for my organization. And we will just wrap up from there and have a Q&A. So, there was already a long introduction, so I'm not going to talk much about myself, but just as a kind of quick background, I was consulting to global companies like Coca-Cola and Bose and Google and Applied Materials across the industry in the past. As a management consultant and also SAP consultant. I've spent most of my career so far happened to be at SAP in a number of different roles, from basically product, being on the product side, product management, to working with partners, driving strategic alliances, to the office of SAP, head of products and CTO, and most recently SAP Startup Accelerator. And I think all these experiences have basically, brought together a broad mindset, that kind of like a general manager mindset, they're saying, typically, where, the more experiences you have, especially across industry, the more you can bring to the table, because you start thinking holistically, you start thinking about, the business problems on the level of the business, on the level of line of business department, on the level of just kind of specific challenges that you're trying to solve. So let's talk a little bit about the trends. And, again, you can open, you can Google, you can see many trends that may be relevant to your industry, just overall. But there are a couple of them that I want to talk to you about today. So one that I'm seeing very prominently is data-driven business. And I think it's not just, it's not just another buzzword. It's not just about, just kind of being, just wanting to be just like everyone else is trying to be. It's really just something I'm seeing that global companies like, like Cisco, like Apple, like, SAP as well, many other companies, not just in tech, but just really cross industry. And that's about basically really just deriving data from the places you haven't been able to get before, bringing it all together, making sure that your data quality is pretty good. The better the data quality, the more you can do in terms of basically applying emerging technologies. Because if you look at the next trend here that I added, it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, and different derivatives of that, like, the newer way to look at it, artificial intelligence of things, for example. And I think it's important, the better your data quality and the more data you can get from different sources across your business. Again, for different industries, it could mean different things, but there are, what makes it different in the past couple of years is the opportunity to get data from the places you haven't been able to get before, analyze it, combine it, make it intelligent from devices, from different places, like, analytics associated with how IT is running the business, and really just making it actionable. Because again, the more data you get, the better quality you get of the data, the more you can do with it in terms of applying emerging technologies like AI and machine learning to make predictions, to analyze and help you develop a product on the manufacturing floor, and other things, like depending on, again, on the industry. So next trend here is co-creating value with external stakeholders. And again, that's not new in a way, but it's becoming more and more important in today's basically digital transformation and today's world. With COVID-19 and the new trends that, unfortunately arose this year, it is not just important, it's vital to have a very robust ecosystem, to work with partners. The more we go, basically, the more digital we go, the more basically we'll look at the use cases with AI and machine learning and IoT, Internet of Things, the end-to-end, in order to enable end-to-end experience, in order to enable end-to-end basically value for your customers, with your partners, you need to partner. and everybody has to partner these days. And you know, companies, like, if you look at the Internet of Things and what Internet of Things means, and I think I have a quick picture here. I think this is just, you know, for those of you who may not know much about it. So it's really just, you know, getting information, putting sensors to certain devices, and devices could be from your phone to, you know, to wearables, to a car, and you can to basically different devices that enable specific businesses, like, you know, in manufacturing, for example. And, you know, taking this information from the sensors for a variety, analyzing it, monitoring, analyzing, and basically helping the business to make decisions. And think about it, it's an end-to-end experience that you need to enable. You need to make your devices smart, not just collect information, say temperature and, you know, humidity, but really just, you know, help that device get a brain and, you know, get this information, make a decision when there is anomaly from whatever is set up as normal, and really just creating this end-to-end experience where this information is quickly fed to other systems that are basically helping to create analytics and basically drive decision making at the end. So now, going back, you know, in order to create this type of experience for companies, for any company, there is no one company today on the market that can create this end-to-end value and to enable end-to-end use case. So you need a hardware company that makes sensors. You need a company, a networking company, connectivity, to enable connectivity. You need at least basically a company like, you know, SAP, for example, that can basically has a solution, analytics solution, and also can feed it into the right system. So if at the end you want to make a decision, you want this information to be a part of your supply chain suite, basically, you want it to be able to basically create this end-to-end flow. So, and again, as I said, partnership can mean different things for different industries. That's why it's a little harder when I talk to the audience that's coming from different backgrounds and looking at different use cases and, you know, has different priorities. But at the end of the day, it's basically, again, one of those common topics that's important to think about, and the network effect that is created by, you know, bringing the right partners together. And later we'll talk also about different type of partners that could be brought together and why, and creating this end-to-end experience. And a few things that, you know, everybody is thinking about today with COVID-19, you know, we've seen that, you know, since nobody expected it, and, you know, every company has made certain planning for this year, everything had to be looked again, reprioritized in many cases, you know, on the level of the business, on the level of basically how the business is running, the whole topic of emergence of remote experience that we now need to enable, that we didn't think about just half a year ago, not only to enable the experience to work from home, but also for our customers, for our partners, how to enable this, basically this whole new world of collaboration. And we are seeing that, you know, a lot of interesting attempts are being made, and I think we're making a history here and changing how the world is running. But all of it basically brings us back to, you know, how flexible we need to be as a business, and how flexible we need to basically be as leaders in kind of driving this business, because, you know, you never know what happens. You need to be able to adjust quickly and adapt, not just kind of internally the company, but how you work with the ecosystem. And, you know, we've seen changes in buying behavior. We've seen how, you know, the situation impacted distribution channels and supply chain and many other areas which we never thought, you know, would be affected before. And what's interesting here also to note, if you think about, for example, supply chain and some of the changes that have been happening in basically digital supply chain, enabling experiences, having, you know, more on-demand type of experiences, where you don't really need to have, you know, large warehouses with lots of stuff, and you really just basically just trying to replenish depending on the demand. So all of it was great until COVID happened. And, you know, that also kind of like changed all the, you know, all the experiences that were enabled by many companies, where all of a sudden that was not any longer uh, you know, responding to the demand and to the way how the new supply chains are working now, and how everything was all of a sudden broken in terms of the supply chains when COVID happened. So again, kind of back to flexibility. One thing, so this is something, we're not going to go into the details, but I wanted to share with you. If you look at AI, for example, it's not something that's only important at the level of the business or business unit. That's something that is, you know, coming up on the basically on the global landscape level, where every country is now just driving specific global basically strategies on the level of the country, um, with certain basically plans and strategies and expectations they're driving and they're sharing with the rest of the world. So I think that's important, because AI, there is a lot of buzz about AI, but when you think about what AI is, you know, how important AI, you can see that it's now recognized basically on the level globally, on the level of the country, and there are different initiatives that are taking place. So you can look at it later. I'm going to share the slide deck for your country. And see if you can, you know, work with your government to take advantage of some of the programs that basically are driven, and where the investment is happening from the AI perspective. I've seen many companies and many, you know, partners of SAP taking advantage of such opportunities, working with governments, by the way. So top technology investments of 2019. I just wanted to share this with you, because this is basically, this is one of the recent surveys that was run by the company called MuleSoft, I believe. And I think this reflects what I'm seeing in terms of what I've been seeing over the past couple of years, and what I'm seeing in terms of where a lot of innovations are happening on from the perspective of technology vendors that are trying to build the right solutions for the market demand, and thinking about the future, but also from the perspective where, you know, where I've seen the companies I invest in. You can see security and big data and analytics, and this goes back to data-driven organizations. So big data and analytics is huge. I mean, I've been talking to many companies over the past year, and different industries again. And so, you know, every company I've talked to has a major initiative around big data analytics. I've seen companies in semiconductor industry and electronics industry that in the past, you know, I'm sure they were thinking about AI, there were certain kind of things they were trying, but all of a sudden they started creating basically the major strategy units to drive how AI and applied AI could basically drive the business, drive transformation for their businesses. So this is big. Internet of Things have been on the market, you know, one of those buzzwords, but something that I've seen actually work over the past probably 5 years now. But you can see it's not just still there. It's one of the top 5 investments that the companies are making. So cloud strategy, and some of you may not know, basically may not want to go that far, but AI, machine learning, blockchain, streaming big data, and so on. So these are important because, again, that kind of gives you an indication of what to think about when you know, you think about your business and where you are going. So one thing that I found interesting and I wanted to share with you Um, you know, when you think about innovation and when you think about basically how companies are enabling innovation, I've talked to so many companies that it was, you know, mind blowing, you know, how, you know, for example, a postal office, um, a postal services basically is thinking about, not just thinking, but, you know, the type of innovation they're, you know, they're trying and they're building, they're thinking about. I was seriously, I was shocked how basically, you know, you can just take any organization, any industry, and just kind of make it really innovative and make it really just kind of thinking, you know, not just thinking, but, you know, building their future today, pretty much. And so many other industries as well. So I kind of came up with a few things for you to think about, which I think are important to not only, you know, think about the business, but, you know, try how to make it work as a part of basically how your company is, how your company is basically can enable that innovation. And when I talk about innovation, when I think about innovation, and I want you to think about it from the perspective, it's, you know, you don't have to be in corporate strategy team, you know, just driving basically innovation for the entire company. You may or may not be, and some of you may be specifically focusing on just one little thing, which may be very important. Um, and that's okay. You know, innovation could be driven from anywhere, from line of business, from specific, basically, if you're seeing specific challenges that you're trying to solve where emerging technologies could help you just make it not only, you know, more efficient from the perspective of, you know, time investment, you know, from the perspective of how much money you can save, but also kind of some of the breakthroughs you can enable and how to, you know, if you think about pharmaceutical, you know, how much innovation is now happening with AI and basically drug development, and or you think about other industries, we'll talk about it later. But back to basically that slide, I wanted to talk about basically innovation culture overall. If you are able to, if you're one of those, in one of those roles where you're able to influence innovation for your company overall, so these are things to think about. So it's basically about, to me, from what I've seen across different customers, it's about a couple of things. So first of all, you know, being consistent with your vision and trying different things. And it should be a really just a company mindset that is okay with just trying and maybe failing and trying again. If there's something that works and you made it work, trying to test it and then scale it and then coming back. And we'll talk about basically different functions where it could be driven from. But again, one thing that I mentioned earlier today is best practices from the market, right? And it doesn't have to be best practices from your industry. It could be, but it's about thinking how can you create a competitive edge? How can you basically make your business, your product more competitive, and borrowing ideas basically from different industries, from different markets, uh, to basically try to make a difference. And what I've seen work is innovation that basically happens both top down and bottom up. So both from the perspective of, you know, say a unit that's driving a strategy and innovation and cascading it down to basically individual departments and line of businesses and different basically specific product lines, and bottom up where, you know, employees can bring up ideas, and not just bring up ideas but actually can try to make it work and test the market and test certain ideas. And that certainly, you know, requires a culture in the company that supports basically various way how innovation is being created, and not just supports but kind of welcomes this type of feedback and this type of ways. getting ahead of the curve, again, I mean, emerging technologies is not just, technology is never about technology. It's about solving business problems or about enabling new business models, new experiences, staying competitive. So it's just a, a tool set, right? So, and that's how you should think about it. It's all should come, should be about basically what are you trying to achieve, and emerging technologies can help you. But at the same time, it's also good to look at what emerging technologies could do, and looking at what could be applicable to some of the use cases that you're trying to drive. So it's really both ways, but at the end of the day, so just kind of looking at basically some of the capabilities of emerging technologies and thinking about basically what are you trying to achieve and mapping it back and forth. So it's an ongoing process. It should be an ongoing process, and that's what I've seen works the best. It can never be what we used to do in the past, 5-year roadmap and basically once a year release, and you just basically just keep going that way. You're not going to be competitive. It has to be basically something that's dynamic, something that you can just kind of you can be basically constantly monitoring and kind of providing feedback, and really just something dynamic. Joint venture business and IT. I think the company is, I've seen the companies being successful, most successful, those who really just create this partnership internally within the company, where they come together and they try to look at the business basically and where the business is going, and brainstorming basically how technology can make a difference and what technology can make a difference. And again, that should be an interactive ongoing process. A lot of companies I see just kind of running it in parallel and siloed. There is an IT organization and doing something, and there is business trying to solve problems, and they sort of intersect, but they don't really just work together in terms of just driving global transformation for the business. And again, I talked about ecosystem, and again, it's about end-to-end use cases. So it's no longer, in the past we were all thinking about, here's a product I have, this is what I'm selling to my customer, this is basically just one piece, and that's how I sell. It's no longer anywhere. I can't even think of any single example where it's basically about the product anymore. It has to be about experience. So these days we're selling solutions and experiences, and that's how you should think about it. And in order to, most of the time, in order to create and sell a solution and experience, you need to show how it works end to end in terms of what the customer is looking for, whoever is your customer, right? So it has to be basically, you can't, you can't sell, for example, a device if if you don't think about basically potential support that you need to, if it's a device that requires additional parts, you need to enable your ecosystem so that there are choices. If it's something more complicated and complex, so there are always partnerships that need to be basically a part of that experience. And when you sell experiences, it's a completely different game. Where I've seen innovation work in terms of where it's created, again, I've seen companies that are very successful creating it on the level of corporate strategy. And it's never one place. It's a combination of different things here, right? There are internal R&D functions. There are corporate accelerators, and one I'll give you an example later. It's business, could be business unit driven and employee driven. And a combination of those is what makes it successful typically. So one thing that I wanted to share with you is how SAP is enabling innovation for the company. And SAP is now, and as a disclaimer, I'm no longer with SAP. I'm about to join another company soon. I've been consulting over the past few months. But so I'm just talking about my experiences here. So one thing that is very interested in SAP have used just some of the fundamentals from McKinsey and the 3 horizons of growth, and as well as some other sources to create that model. But that model seems to be very just something that the company has adopted, and it's very easy to understand, and I think that could be applicable to many of your businesses. So it's 3 horizons. It's basically continuous innovation, adjacent innovation, and transformative innovation. That's basically how you think about the whole business. And you can see that there are 2 main parameters how you evaluate basically what you're driving and what falls into each horizon. It's a market maturity, and it's technology and business trends maturity. And so I'll just kind of go over very quickly. It's emerging technologies and trends. This is what you see in the new, and new solutions that you're trying to launch in new markets, new buying center, net new customers, new basically go-to-market channels. It's basically in Horizon 3. Or what is it? Yeah, Horizon 3. The next horizon, which is Horizon 2, is basically what's existing and scaling as a part of basically your business, as well as from the basically solutions that you're building, the products that you're building. It's basically adjacent solutions. So you're leveraging existing resources, and you basically using the technology that's commonly used in your industry at scale, and it's growing adoption at your business. And now the Horizon 1, it's basically an existing and established, basically what's existing and established, how are you making money today, what's successful, and basically what's your core value proposition, what's basically the core that makes your business basically made you move where you are today on the market. So a couple of things here that SAP has done, which I found very, very unique to tell you the truth. And I think it's something that many companies could leverage and try to build for their businesses. So they built 2 basically units, and there is more, but I'm going to talk about this 2 because I think this is important. They built SAP Startup Accelerator. So that's basically a corporate accelerator. And the idea here, and you can see that it's basically in this intersection of new and next, right? So Horizon 3 and Horizon 2. So really just kind of like driving innovation here in this segment. And the idea here is a couple of things. So first of all, you create an ecosystem of startups who are innovators in the space that you're looking to, basically create a new way of running business, create value, since SAP is in the business of providing business applications, analytics, platform services to basically across all the industries in the world and globally. So here we're talking about basically where SAP is focusing, and just I'll give you one example. So there are kind of 3 major areas that SAP focused here over the past few years, which is digital supply chain, manufacturing, and assets. And how do you enable innovation for this huge basically areas cross industry or specific industries that where the customers are looking to enable innovation? And how do you know today, right? So when you create a product, when you have product owners, you have innovation that you are thinking about, you test it, but how about basically you get an opportunity or try to create an opportunity to grasp the latest innovation on the market that's being created by startups, and create and leveraging those emerging technologies for certain use cases where you see the major impact and the major innovation. So basically that's why SAP created the Startup Accelerator, where basically the goal was to find innovative startups that are creating unique value that could be repeatable for multiple customers, and helping basically create an integrated experience where startup technology could be integrated into SAP portfolio, say supply chain portfolio, digital supply chain, to enable digital supply chain innovation. And then basically at the same time working with customers and, you know, with basically strategic customers who are driving innovation for their businesses to test the ideas. So that's kind of one interesting place, and I can talk more about it later. And another piece that SAP basically built is called SAP IO. So what it is it's a couple of things. It's basically, I'm just gonna make it here, okay. So it's basically just driving innovation from inside and outside of SAP. So inside, SAP created a program where employees who have great ideas could actually get funding by SAP to create some sort of startup that within the company, but operating as basically independently, sort of like a real startup, but funded by SAP to drive your idea for the business into they actually creating a business opportunity. And at the same time, working with startups, but basically both as a venture capital entity, basically funding startups, innovating in certain areas that are important for SAP customers, as well as accelerating some of the startups basically that are being funded. And so when you think about these two entities and how basically the company can, that's kind of one way that's very, I've seen work really well, where the company can work with basically innovative startups outside, basically on the market, that can create value as a part of basically end-to-end experience with your product and creating what I call the experiences that you are selling at the end. End-to-end experiences, as well as the internal innovation where internally employees could really just you know, if they have great idea, they can create a business case, and if this business case is prioritized and approved by the specific basically, you know, board that's making that decision within the company, they are getting an investment. And as they operate as any other startup on the market, they got, you know, some initial funding, they have certain goals, they have to test it. If that works, they move to the next step, they can get additional funding. And actually I've seen that work really well. And then basically for that time period that the employee or, you know, a certain team is focusing on creating basically something innovative and testing it, they are just moving temporarily from their direct responsibilities, and they are completely focusing on that if basically they are selected. Of course, you know, only the top ideas that seem to basically align really well with market opportunity and is breakthrough and innovative win. But that's a way to drive innovation from within the company in addition to outside in innovation. Any questions here? Okay, so if no questions, we can continue. But please, you know, ask your questions. I want to make sure that this is valuable for you. So if you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask. So emerging technologies, again, I mean, this is just kind of one way to look at it. And these are the technologies that I've seen, you know, mostly leveraged in the past, you know, say 3-4 years. And I'm going to talk more about the application, but basically, of course, emerging technologies could mean a lot. There are a number of emerging technologies and a number of use cases, depending on where you are in the industry and what you're trying to achieve. It's going to be kind of specific technology that you're going to look at. But just moving on, couple of things that I've seen really just, you know, as patterns, I should say, across different industries. So things like track and trace and condition monitoring. So taking a product basically as a part of the supply chain, and it could be any product, especially products, it's not just tracking, but it's also about condition monitoring, right? So especially those products, and we'll talk a little bit later about specific industry application, but what's called cold chain monitoring, meaning, you know, if a product is perishable or has to be in certain conditions, you know, during transportation and storage, you want to make sure that, you know, you are enabling basically an experience so that you can track that the product is being stored as it's supposed to be, being transported with certain conditions, and so on. So it has to be basically a part of this whole end-to-end experience, because it's never enough to create a great product. You have to make sure that it's delivered in the right condition to the end consumer, whoever your end consumer is. And here, you know, mainly sensor technology comes into play, but of course, it, you know, the more complicated it is, you know, the more you see machine learning and AI. So, you know, again, the sensor, machine learning, AI, you know, you'll see in different things in chemicals and pharmaceutical, achieving the right formula. In food industry, you know, I've seen a company that was looking to make sure the ratio, basically ratios in the milk productions, what they were looking to gain. And they were looking for specific sensors with condition monitoring and with basically machine learning that would make sure that the ratio is the right ratio during the production. We know that success rate of new drugs and vaccines and so on is basically a lot driven by AI. Anomaly detection, that's a huge one. I mean, that I've seen that across different industries and in different use cases. So for example, a combination of machine learning and computer vision for quality control in manufacturing, or in other basic manufacturing for different industries, I should say, right? So that you detect anomalies as they appear, right? And take an action right away, not, you know, after, oh, excuse me, not after basically the fact. Inventory control in retail, right? So retail, I mean, there is so much innovation in retail that's been happening over the past few years and it's evolving. But it's not just about inventory control as we know it. It's about, you know, smart shelf, you know, where you as a consumer, you may or may not even know that, but many retailers are now creating this computer vision and machine learning based basically technology that is monitoring in real time, monitoring what's on the shelf. Whenever you take something off the shelf, it's basically, you know, goes back to replenishing the inventory, for example, right? And many other ways, basically how this has been looked at. Drone and machine learning, you know, basic combination of drone and machine learning technology and AI for inspections, you know. So there is so much across different industries where video feed basically from the drones could really just, not video feed, but basically just video recording and tagging of anomalies with the right technology can make a huge difference. Basically, whether you're talking about oil and gas and or basically where you monitor and basically, or construction industry or any other basically within a store. I'll show you a quick example later. Predictive maintenance and services, right? This is a big one. Basically, just most of the companies that have assets, they want to make sure that they move to the predictive maintenance and service rather than basically maintenance service that happens after the fact when something is already broken, and now it's basically you're wasting time and money to basically to repair the certain equipment. So basically put in sensors and machine learning, vibration analysis, all kind of different technology, as a part of the use case can make a huge difference, where you maintain your equipment, as basically in real time as you need it. And anything that goes wrong, any anomalies are being detected right away and taken care of right away. Technology interaction, there is a lot of innovation where now you can basically, with eye tracking, you can just take certain actions basically that as a part of, say, on a manufacturing floor, when manufacturing workers need to assemble something, and they need to, so two things here. So first, the eye tracking, there where they hands-free can do stuff, right? And it's eye tracking. So I've seen basically what do you call it, wearables that also help you be basically hands-free and kind of like take certain actions, yes, no, just some simple basically actions on the screen, hands-free, as well as with smart glasses. And again, so these are not just something that some buzzwords and some technologies that we never see anybody use. That's real. All of this is real. I've seen real companies, big companies, really just not just testing it, but implementing it into their a part of their business processes, to their manufacturing floors, to their supply chains, and so on. So this is all real. This is not just some buzzwords we're hearing and talking about. Sentiment analysis is also very interesting and very important. We'll talk about it later. So let's talk a little bit about industry use cases. And again, if anybody has any questions, please ask. So I'll just look into different, completely different industries, and some of this might be relevant to you. Or not, but again, I want you to look at it and just think about kind of getting ideas from that, and thinking what could be applicable from what you see to your business. So pharmaceutical, chemicals, perishable foods, agriculture, I sort of combined it. There are some unique basically business problems that each industry is trying to solve, but there is also a lot of commonality. So drug food formulation, I sort of talked about it. Again, sensor technology, machine learning technology, anomaly detection, so on. So this plays a role. Accuracy management. Cold chain monitoring, I talked a little bit about it. Again, enabling end-to-end supply chain where you need to deliver the product in the right condition to the customer. And again, so that's a combination of several technologies. Track and trace, not necessarily you need a condition monitoring, but you need to track where your product is if it's a physical product that you're sending to the customer. And that's basically, I think that's important. Not just, I've seen that basically being of high importance to across different industries and different products, right? And it's both tracking, on the land and in the sea sometimes. And, there is a different technology, on the sea, it's satellite technology that's enabling connectivity. For example, on a level of a container, there is a level of pallet, bin, item. So depending on what you're looking at, it's similar technology with a little twist that comes into place, but, it's something that will be getting more and more traction. Recall. So recalling, whether it's foods or in pharmaceutical industry, drugs, vaccines, so anything that, I think this is super important. Blockchain, I've seen many, that's kind of, I think, one of the biggest applications of blockchain for such use cases, where you need to really just track, every serial number of an item, and you need to be able to get back to basically to that specific item if something is wrong and you need to recall it, right? So also in the world of baby items and so on. Worker safety. So that's applicable to not just this industry, so that's applicable to just any any industry where there is a potential danger, whether it's, construction that basically is happening everywhere, and where you need to make sure if there is a situation that, first of all, there is a situation that you need to basically send some sort of notification and warning to a worker, as well as if a worker is experiencing certain situations, so that they could basically manage that situation quickly as well and get help quickly. Again, so here, there are different things like, smart helmets, smart glasses. I've seen that work really well, and help basically manage. That's both from the perspective of liability for the company, also from the perspective of basically just managing safety of employees. Instant reorder, so that's another interesting one. Basically, let's say you're a farmer and you are dealing with chemicals to treat basically the crops, and you need to reorder. You need to reorder certain basically chemicals. There are solutions now that where you can just with your mobile phone and computer vision just kind of look at the picture of the bottle that already expired, or whether expired, or you finish the bottle of the chemical, and you basically just push an instant reorder, so it recognizes what this article is, what this chemical is, and gives you an opportunity to reorder, and you just click a button. That, again, that's applicable just all along, just anywhere. As consumers, we basically just like to reorder stuff. Let's say if we order from Amazon, the easier it is to enable that experience, the better. Again, you can see that many of these three use cases I sort of filed under, grouped under this, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 industries. This could be applicable to others. Postal services, I mentioned that earlier, and when I talked to one of those customers, I couldn't believe it, that just a simple postal service could be so innovative and think so much out of the box, so that they think about not just think, they actually been testing and they've been implementing some of this already. Smart mailbox, basically delivery vehicles, and how to enable predictive maintenance, which we talked about already. Reorder button, how to actually, they were looking to create reorder button for their customers. So they were exploring basically the business of reordering certain items that they can deliver as a postal office, to enable to penetrate a new market. So they were not just thinking about just simple postal service, right? So now they're thinking much broader, robotic and drone deliveries. Again, so this is super innovative, and I know that they have already been testing many robots, and they started drone deliveries. Again, it depends on the country, on the legislation, and certain other things, but it's an example how you can think out of the box, and not just think out of the box, but also, actually test it and try it, and, transform your business and be on the same page with where the market is going, and just be ahead of the curve. Warehouse sorting strategy, how do you sort, basically, how do you optimize basically sorting of the parcels, so that it's fast, so that it's accurate, less manual labor. Retail, I've talked to a customer, just talked, we actually made some end-to-end solutions happen. Customer in, for example, in shoe industry. So it's a pretty well-known brand, and again, they're not just thinking about, they're already implementing a way to create custom fitting and custom design. So here we're talking about the specific technology that can basically, as you enter the store, or maybe at home. And actually there was a use case at home as well with your mobile device, which was less accurate, but the possibility. So the main use case was you enter the store and you can put your feet on a certain technology, the 3D scanner, and it gets not only your measurements, but some specifics of your feet, both feet, and creates basically shoes that perfectly align with your, not just your, size, but all the peculiarities of your specific, feet, and as well as design. Buy online, pick up in the store. So this is a model that we've seen, now. I mean, with COVID, this is just kind of one of the top ones that every retailer is trying to enable. And when you look at it, again, so I will show you an example how, we enabled basically collaborative robotic experience to reduce the manual labor in the warehouse, to help, the retailer enable that experience. And now I think it's becoming even more important because you want less people, less interaction, and basically more automation. Returns management as well. Shelf, warehouse, inventory monitoring management. I talked a little bit about it. In-store safety inspection and analytics. So that's drone-based, and it could be basically, it doesn't have to be in retail. It could be anything, any, building where you need a safety inspection for compliance, and you're looking basically for easy way to do it, to automate it, so that it's not just people, walking around and just checking the boxes. Again, so that's something that already works today. People flow to the store and in-store. So that's another interesting one. It's, again, I mean, now with COVID, I think that's kind of one of the, something that was sort of tried before. It could be now reprioritized as one of the top ones, because it actually, so there is a way with certain sensor technology that can measure the flow to a building. And one interesting startup we worked with actually had a number of customers, and they have application of their technology not only for such use cases where they can track people flow, but also they can, they apply their technology to medical field and to basically to, scanning for certain disease. But so that's interesting, and that's very important, as well as in-store experience, where you can manage the flow, you can monitor the flow of people moving between departments, and also just both kind of from the perspective today, it would be from the perspective of managing how many people you want in the store to make it a safe environment. But in the past, when, in the last couple of years, when we actually looked into these scenarios and looked to enable it, it was, for different reason. It was from the perspective of marketing. I mean, from the perspective of marketing to basically, if it's a, parking structure, in the mall, and you want to basically be able to see where people are going, and you're managing the mall basically facility, I mean, mall overall, and you want to basically see which brands are being, are being looked at first when people enter, into the mall, or when people move within the store, where do they go? How do they basically, in order to be able to basically create in-store experience that matches basically people's kind of instincts, intuition, and expectations, as they enter the store, right? So different kind of ways how you can kind of create this type of experiences by leveraging technology, that could be applicable here. Construction, there are a number of really just use cases in construction, but the main one is anomaly detection. And it's very important to capture anomalies when when you build in construction, some sort of construction, whatever it is, as it happens. As we know, I mean, if there is some structural anomaly that's detected after the fact, and it's already basically you know, you cannot fix it, or, you know, whatever fix you will put will not basically make it 100%. It'll just sort of like, you know, make it better. So that's a huge one, and there are different technology that's used for that, from drone to basically a lot of drone usage from this video basically footage, and comparing you know, what's really happening with basically with the design and with basically other, you know, parameters defined by the company. Rust erosion detection, that's for all the buildings. And again, so there are now ways to, you know, with a drone flying around, just kind of detect the anomalies from the normal state. Worker safety, I talked about. Air quality, which is also something you can see in other places as well. Discrete manufacturing, for example, automotive. We talked about real-time quality control. AR, VR, we didn't talk much about it, but AR, VR, voice assisted, eye tracking assisted assembly. So that's a big one that I mentioned earlier. Media, in media, what we see a lot is sentiment analysis. So basically just, you know, interpretation of emotions people experience towards brands, products, or services, and could be positive, negative, or neutral. So this is being used a lot, and there are different use cases for that. But that's kind of one that I'm seeing more and more traction, and there will be basically more to it as we see it. Live streaming, and again, now with COVID, it became even more important. It was already a trend and already use cases that people were enabling for their businesses. Mixed reality, though that's a newer one, but I think it's very interesting one. Again, privacy is important there, but it's basically a way where if you enable that experience, people basically your surroundings are being scanned to see where, you know, where you are, what you're doing, and provide you the content that might be of interest to you according to basically what you're doing, where you are. And I think that that's a big one that will be gaining a lot of traction in the future. And of course, pragmatic advertising and personalized content. So there is a lot of innovation happening there for the media. Utilities, emergency response, situational analysis, remote maintenance, with smart glasses, with live video stream. So there is so much to it, and this is, again, this is one of the key ones. In California, a couple of years ago, there were major fires, and the air quality during that couple of months was, I think it was worse than in China. You know, we were told it was really bad. And so what was happening is that, you know, if it was detected quickly, and if it was taken care of, you know, on a spot, we wouldn't be in that situation, because there was no emergency response that took place, or, you know, field technicians who were on site who were able to detect and solve the problem as it was happening, right? And not every technician can be skilled to, you know, to diagnose a problem. But if there is a technology, the right technology in place, and you can in real time live stream with your smart glasses and other technology what's happening, and connect to remote experts on site, and basically just detect the problem together as you're seeing it. So basically you are the experts that could be located anywhere in the world can see what you're seeing with your smart glasses, and look at specifications, look at the history of the equipment, look at the basically you know, notes associated with you know, how the specific asset or equipment is being was being maintained, what are the issues that took place in the past, what is the best, you know, if they diagnose the problem, what are the best practices of fixing that problem. So there's a lot that could be done with remote collaboration in real time for such basically emergency responses. Any questions here? I've been talking a lot. I just want to make sure that you guys we're still on the same page. And
it's a lot. It's a lot of information, but I think everyone is enjoying such an informative presentation, which is why everybody's probably still in awe.
Okay.
Well,
Good.
see, we have so far. We have a lot of notes saying it's great so far. Taking notes. So definitely, yeah, it's very
Okay.
informative.
Okay, very good. So, so going back to the startup accelerator that SAP had, and where I was driving basically the end-to-end innovation with startups, connecting startups to the repeatable use cases that I was driving. Basically, I was prioritizing with product teams, with customers. And, you know, I think it was so interesting, such a kind of great vehicle for collaboration to create this end-to-end experiences for customers in different industries that I want to share more. So I wanted to kind of deep dive a little bit into the startup accelerator and, you know, what we did and how we did it, because I think it could be, you know, it could be something that you can apply potentially, you know, to your business. So the startup accelerator was in this basically Horizon 2 and Horizon 3. And if you look at it, basically, it was sort of on the intersection of emerging technology and trends, and where SAP was looking to basically launch new solutions or enable end-to-end experiences in new markets, and but kind of touching that, but mostly in the Horizon 2, where basically SAP, which we called adjacent innovation, which is basically an extension of where SAP has been focusing for the last number of years, but taking it to the next step, right, with emerging technologies. And again, I talked to about many of these areas, but just to just maybe to, you know, to sum it up: machine learning from anomaly detection, collaborative robotics, autonomous remote inspections, sensor and what's called edge hardware, right? So it's, you know, think about it, all kind of sensors, right? Worker safety, people, vehicle, traffic optimization. So again, it's optimization of people flow, it's optimization of, you know, if it's a logistics or transportation example, how to optimize the route for, let's say if you know, if you're, you know, if you're a truck driver and you're delivering certain products and you want to make sure that you're, you know, you are, you know, on the right track, and in terms of kind of where do you deliver and how do you deliver first, what's more important, and, you know, if you have flexibility to manage it, right? Or if you know, just simple example, if you're a consumer and, you know, your washing machine broke and you ordered the service on your washing machine, and we all probably have been in that situation where you're being told there is a window of 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and, you know, just sit and wait. And so that happens because, you know, there is no good tool that, you know, people, the technicians could use to manage basically and optimize how they basically route, you know, their orders, route basically the work that they have to do between basically different orders that they have for the day. So that's kind of one of the things that, you know, that you can think about, just kind of to relate to it. Startups. Why innovate with startups? And I sort of talked a little bit about it, but again, it's a way for you to harvest and integrate this disruptive innovation, right? So there's so much innovation on the market, but also there are companies who are, you know, focusing on this one thing, trying to solve this one business problem or enable this one process that might be very relevant to you, and they already dedicated their time, their resources to basically, you know, solving it with emerging technologies. So why try to, you could, innovate within the company, and you should, but why not try to work? You cannot innovate on everything, right? So why not try to partner with one of the startups that is pioneering something in the space, and try to create the value together? And that's the value of partnership. But I think working with startups is could be much more rewarding. It could be challenging, but it could be also rewarding, because startups are typically more flexible than established companies. And so when you're working with an established company, it could get really complicated, because many times there is competition. They already set on how they run business, how they build their technology, which platform they're using for their technology. It's hard to draw the line with them on where basically their technology or solution comes into the play, and how basically an end-to-end integrated solution could look like. They could already be working with your competition. So, working with startups could be very rewarding, because it's a way to build early partnership with innovators who are investing already their time and talent and basically technical resources into specific space that's important and relevant to you. And at the same time, it's an opportunity for you to to build an early partnership and kind of lock them into working with you rather than with your competitors. Again, think about emerging technology and repeatable end-to-end use cases. We talked about it. Internally, that's also working with startups. For me, it was also a way to push the boundaries internally within the company, right? And make product owners, line of businesses think out of the box, because sometimes they're not even thinking about solving a problem in a certain way or enabling a use case, or they might not even think about certain use case or some twist for a specific industry. But then if I see something interesting that the startups are doing, I can bring it to basically to the right stakeholders internally and show them, basically open their horizons and tell them, here's another way how we could do it, or here's an interesting technology we can look at and apply to basically, to the solution that we're trying to enable. And that could make a much bigger difference than what we're trying to do in-house, for example, innovating in-house for such use case. And so that's another way. So basically bringing innovation from the outside and pushing basically stakeholders internally to innovate. That's also a way to test the market. You can validate new solutions, concepts, use cases. And that's great, because if there's something new that you are creating and you need basically to test it with the partner that you trust, and with the partner that basically can also bring something to the table to enable the end-to-end experience, that's a great basic opportunity. SAP is not basically new in the world of working with partners. You can see that SAP started working with partners in 2012. So it's been a number of years, 8 years, that SAP has been working with startups successfully. Of course, there was a learning curve, and SAP tried different models. And when we talk to other big corporations that are trying to work with startups, we were told that we basically they see in SAP a lot as a best practice. I also have been on a tour where, of corporate accelerators, from Microsoft, from Coca-Cola, a few others, and where we compared the notes and we talked about how everybody is working with startups and basically enabling that collaboration experience. And you see different twists and different models, but at the end of the day, everybody's recognizing that working with startups could be rewarding. And it doesn't have to be basically working with startups to enable use cases for your customers. It could be working with startups to enable your business, how your business is running and how you're creating the product and innovating, in the product. Just kind of going a little deeper into the accelerator that SAP has. again, looking benefits for the customers, which is something we haven't talked about. All of a sudden, you're getting access to curated startup innovation. So many times, you know, you see specific customer requests. They may not even be something where that you see applicable to many customers, you know, in that market. But this is a strategic customer that you have. Or this may be applicable in the future, but, you know, this customer is super innovative. And they're looking for a certain way to basically to get a product from you or for a certain experience. That's a great opportunity to basically bring a startup that you're already engaged with and is saying, hey, why don't we just create a POC and try that together? So here's our early partner that basically has a great technology to solve that specific business problem or enable that use case. Why don't we work with them and we create a POC with that customer? And this POC could then lead to, you know, full-blown, you know, implementation globally at a customer, and could be applicable to many other customers in the future. So again, like there is this whole notion of intelligent enterprise, which is basically, you know, taking what used to be enterprise resource planning on the level of the business and also looking at certain business applications and making them smart. And you can make them smart just, you know, just there's so many areas that you can make smart, and that's why there's so much opportunity for innovation. And of course, it's a benefit for startups because startups are looking to grow their business. They're looking to get access to customers. They're looking to basically create success stories. And you can, you know, this partnership gives them an opportunity also to test their technology in real life examples, to adjust their technology, to mature their technology, as well as to get access to customers and kind of partner with you. So that's a win-win situation for everyone. We talked about many of them, and this is just an example, but, you know, last couple of years, the focus has been on the SAP assets, digital supply chain, and manufacturing portfolio with different solutions, different products that SAP has as a part of it. And on the left, you see, we sort of like started thinking about, you know, so what is it that we're kind of, how can we categorize it? So it's human-machine interface. We talked about it, smart wearables, where you can really just make it applicable to a number of different industries and make it, you know, make a difference. Intelligence aided by AI and machine learning. Additive manufacturing, we didn't talk much about it, but it's basically 3D printing and how 3D printing could make a difference. And I worked with customers in basically that creating dental solutions, for example, and 3D printing, basically really just kind of leveraging 3D printing already and working with startups that are innovating in the space. And there are other use cases for that as well. Robots for transportation. Here we're talking about what's called collaborative robots. So these are robots that are designed to work with humans. So for example, if a robot is autonomously moving, so there are sensors that, you know, make sure the robot is not, you know, running into people. Whenever, you know, there is certain obstacle, it goes around. And we've done a lot of innovation for robotics and warehousing. I'll give you an example later. And there are many other areas applicable to that. Supply chain visibility, as I mentioned, you know, tracking and tracing, you know, item, product, container, you know, with condition monitoring or without condition monitoring, just to make sure that you have ETA on, you know, when the product is going to be delivered to a customer. If you want to monitor the condition of the product as well, that's also a great opportunity. Digital freight forwarder, so that's for logistics, outdoor and indoor localization. So that's also important. I think what's interesting is that most of the warehousing facilities today don't have a good way basically to don't have a good way to sort of like digitally map their facilities. which leads to basically if you have a drone that you want to fly and with video that you are taking, with video feed you're creating for analysis, it's hard to basically map it to the facility. And many warehouses and big retailers, they often have issues with stock, basically with the right stock check, right? So many times in their system, they have basically inconsistency between what they see in the system, number of items. You probably have seen it in retail a lot, where you're told that there are 2 items in this other store, and just to basically drive there and to find out that they can't find an item at all, and they have no idea where it went. So a lot of inconsistencies there that could be solved with sensor technology and with other technology, basically, and indoor and outdoor localization is as well. So this is just an example of some of the startups we worked with, just for your information and kind of thinking back kind of into that cycle, and looking at some of the categories we talked about. This is basically just one company, one startup that created the new notion, basically the notion of remote assisted reality, they call it, kind of like a mix of AR and VR. This is where I talked about basically emergency response with a field technician who is trying to fix an equipment remotely, and basically a way to enable this real-time collaboration experience with experts that could be sitting anywhere in the world, who could be called for emergency assistance, and looking at specific issues basically through smart glasses, looking at what's happening and comparing it to the equipment maintenance history, looking if they identify the problem, looking for a quick way to fix it, looking at basically other things, and integrating basically that experience back to business applications in the asset space, as well as basically other areas that are relevant, creating also the mobile experience with that. And so this is just one company I wanted to kind of show you as an example that we integrated into SAP Assets, basically a suite of applications, as well as other areas, predictive maintenance and services, solutions, and so on, to create this end-to-end experience for customers. We also had an interesting experience working with 3 startups at a time to enable basically a couple of use cases. But these technologies and these startups, we partnered different startups to create basically the experiences that we were looking for. So that's also an opportunity. In this case, it was basically, there were 3 use cases: robot-assisted product returns, robot-assisted buy online, pickup in the store, and drone and machine learning for daily in-store safety inspection and report. And that was all done for one customer. So with one customer in retail, it was basically, there were 3 use cases that were identified as something that where they wanted to focus. And we basically brought these 3 startups together to enable those use cases end to end. This is just kind of the example of the drone-based inspection, visual inspection that I just mentioned. So in this case, in this example, for compliance reasons, so this door, emergency basically door, was supposed to, not only was supposed to be locked, but also was supposed to be, you can see certain space, some clearance that's supposed to be basically next to the door, a few other things that have to be there basically as a part of the daily safety inspection for compliance purposes. And so that was enabled with drone-based computer vision, machine learning, analytics, and so on technology to make basically that retailer's life easier. And that's an example of the robotics that I was talking about. So this is one of the robotic startups that we worked with called Fetch Robotics, and this is their collaborative robots. So what they do in this collaborative robots, so there is a way for example, if there is a return that customer is, customer is returning an item, and there is an associate who processes the return, and they basically have a way to just put the box into the robot, and robot brings it to the right place, eliminating a lot of manual work associated with basically with just kind of bringing this item back to where it was. And here it's very important, it appears to be very important, we don't think about it, right? If it's a small space, it's not a big deal, where people can just go back and forth and bring the item back to the shelf. But if we're talking about large warehouse-like spaces, right, it makes a huge difference. People usually today, people doing so much walking around the warehouse, and it not only waits a lot of time, but also sometimes they come in and they can't find it, or it's not in the right place. And so it's basically it's automating a lot of manual work and human resource investment today. And you can see, so this is just one of the robots, and there are different ways. There are now robots with robotic arm and other places which basically allow to put the item to the certain level of the shelf, and this area is developing. I'm almost done. So a few takeaways that I want to mention. First of all, think out of the box. It's always rewarding. It's not about emerging technologies. It shouldn't be limited to what you see in the industry, which is of course important, but it's a way to basically just grasp different ideas and test them. Whether you test them just internally by creating an innovation culture where your company employees at different levels can basically test certain innovative ideas and make it work, or you test it on the level of specific R&D unit that's a part of your business, or you work with, for example, startups, with partners and startups who already tested certain ideas and have created certain innovative technology, and you just partner with them to create the end-to-end experience and test it together, because it's a two-way street. Emerging technologies is definitely something you need to look at and think about, and also just you as an individual looking at the emerging technologies as a way to just get ideas for your business, right? So I gave you a number of ideas probably today that you could potentially think about how it could apply to your business, but also just be on the lookout. I mean, it's evolving, it's developing. It's not just a buzzword. It's something that companies are using today, and you can use it too, and you should use it too, to make your business flexible, adaptable, and competitive. Define your goals and be clear on how you measure success. So that's important. On one hand, innovation is very should be flexible and iterative process. On the other hand, for example, if you're working with startups, it's critical that you are both on the same page on what are you trying to achieve together, what's the time investment on both sides, how you measure success, what are you trying to deliver, and how, so that there are no disconnects on where you're going with that, what are the expectations on both sides, what is the investment. For startups, it's very important to be they typically have limited resources, limited funding, and they're trying to move the mountains. So if it's something that you want to make sure that they invest their time with you, and there is a reward for them, and there is a joint opportunity that you're trying to enable together. It's an ecosystem play. So as I said, everybody needs to partner today. Nobody can do it alone anymore. You can get alone, you can get to a certain point, But then, you know, in order to stay competitive, you have to partner. You know, partnership could take many ways and many faces, but you know, whatever partnership means for you. And the last thing here, it's an evolution. So think big, be flexible, try, learn, and repeat. You know, it's something that is ongoing, and I said, and you have to make sure that you look at it as not set in stone, but something that's evolving. And I think that's it for now. That's it for today. Any questions?
Yeah, there is a question from our Russian counterpart. Could you please tell us more about digital innovations in designing, in building and managing, in designing, building and managing houses? What do you think about the perspectives of BIM modeling?
Perspective of
BIM modeling.
BIM modeling. So I think that's something we should take offline, and I'm happy also not only just kind of to share with you, you know, what my experience has been with the companies, but also, you know, maybe make some connections for you if that's of interest. So you can follow up with me specifically on that topic afterwards, and we'll discuss in detail.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Of course. Of
Alla,
course.
can you, quick question, can you share your contact and email here in the group chat? There's a few requests to be able to connect with you.
Sure. Sure, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I can, let me see. Where is the chat window? Okay, so now I can see the chat. Okay, so, oops. Can you?
Yes, we see it there.
Oops.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
If you don't mind, Alla, we have a few more questions lined up for you, if that's okay.
Sure, one second, let me just look at the chat window. Sure.
Question here is, in the digital age, business leaders must stay on top of new emerging and future technologies. But where do you really start? What's your opinion over the starting point of where business leaders should be beginning in this digital age?
Sorry about that. So the starting point, you know, it depends on the business. It depends on the business, and depends on the industry, and depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? So there is no, from what I've seen, there is no just right or wrong answer here. I think, you know, just a couple of things. I said, first of all, as I talked about it, it's first of all, it's about really just making the culture within the company that innovation is not just okayed, but encouraged. And there is a way to test innovative ideas that are being brought internally or from outside. So from that perspective, you know, as I said, it could be driven from anywhere. But I think, you know, if you're thinking about innovation or digital transformation as a business, couple of things. So first of all, I mean, just the typical ones, right? You know, looking at what's happening in trends-wise in your specific industry and the business. What are the best practices that you can find just from a simple research? looking at the emerging technologies, I think emerging technologies is basically where you can draw a lot of ideas, you know, on what could be applicable to your specific business needs and where you're going with that. So from that perspective, I think that's, I think just kind of making your own research and looking at basically what's happening out there and drawing it back to your business goals. But also, it's not just about basically just, you know, integrating, you know, a set of emerging technologies. It's about looking at the business processes overall that the company has created over time and how, you know, these business processes should adapt to where you're trying to go. So I think that's important to note. And, you know, there is one startup I recently have talked to. They actually creating what's called life business process management. So where you can adjust your business processes sort of on the fly if something changes for your company, which is usually a very hard problem to solve. You know, if you're, you know, a 20, you know, 10, 20, 30-year-old company with established business processes, and let's say if you want to move from on-premise to the cloud world, how do you basically make it happen, because everything is set up to work a certain way, right? So basically looking at the business processes is important. But if I think first kind of creating the strategy, what you're trying to achieve, where you're going, you know, which emerging technologies can help you with that. That's basically kind of where how I would start, and also basically just making a comprehensive analysis of the market, competition, what's new happening in the new industry, basically helps to bring it all together.
Thank you for that. With your experience, because after this presentation, I've seen you have a very extensive experience in this field. What do you think is the best challenge that companies face during the innovation cycle?
The best, so the challenges is, I think one that I've seen consistently, you know, the number of companies can get to the point where they tested the idea and they've seen great results, they've seen it work, but then if it's driven from some sort of innovation function that the company has, how do you get the rest of the company on board to actually implement it on a global level? Because it is, or on certain level, right, to scale it to a certain extent. Because at the end of the day, it's, you know, you're trying to enable the business, and if you're talking about the global business, how do you basically, it typically requires a major investment to now scale it to a business level or to a department level. So really just taking this leap from, you know, or I tested this idea, it looks great and it could really just make a big difference for our business, to actually making it happen on the level of, you know, department, line of business, product business. So it's scaling it.
Thank you. In technology, while most of them are successful, what is one aspect that you think that in the past that you never thought would be successful? Hard one.
I didn't think it would be successful. I mean, I'm you know, just generally speaking, an optimist, and I'm seeing opportunities, and I always kind of see how things could work rather than would not work. But I think it's maturing of technology that makes a difference, right? What looked like a, you know, big challenge to make happen in the past, you know, for example, real-time, you know, real-time experiences, real-time feeds, you know, for example, you know, field technician that's somewhere in a remote area, right? So who would have known that it would be possible today to basically connect to, you know, from California to, you know, somewhere, you know, else in the world, in a different continent, to basically work together in real time to solve a problem, right? if you're sort of in a remote area and you're working on very complex problem that you're trying to solve. But also just I've seen that work on the level of, I've seen a Japanese company who moved their offices or open offices in California, and they were looking to enable this collaboration experience on designing a product together, right, for their business, in real time with different engineers sitting in different parts of the world. So, I mean, on one hand, and it's not just about just, screen sharing, it's about, really just kind of deeper experience. And so these are the type of things that, nobody could have known that could be possible in the past. I'm talking about the more complex scenarios, right? With live stream, for example, or AI. I mean, AI is, it's mind-blowing sometimes what AI could do. I mean, even now with COVID and what we are reading from different pharmaceutical companies trying to create a vaccine, it's amazing, right? That you can analyze everything with AI and predict basically, certain results and success rates and, genomics that, all of a sudden just made a huge, difference in the past few years on how basically the treatments are being looked at. So all of this, there are many examples, but I think, what seemed to be challenging just a couple of years ago is now being possible because the technology is maturing.
Thank you. I know that was one of the harder questions, so let me give you an easier one. SAP is betting on emerging technologies to basically map its growth across digital business verticals over the next upcoming years. So the question for you is, what do you think is their forecast on the market for the next 5 years, especially right now with all that's going on with the pandemic and COVID?
First of all, I left SAP, so I'm not gonna talk on behalf of SAP. It's my personal opinion. But, what I've seen, so there is a lot of investment because there is a lot of traction, for example, in Industry 4.0, what's called Industry 4.0, in manufacturing, in, area, for example. The investment will continue to basically to be there because companies are trying to enable, everybody is trying to reinvent themselves. Everybody is trying to make it more cost efficient, more effective, better quality, higher standards. Nothing in that sense. It doesn't stop. Yes, it affects many industries, like for example, automotive, in terms of how they're managing their investments this year and probably next. But on the level of the company, when you're a global company working across all the industries globally, you just, I'm sure you can manage it in terms of basically managing, where you're seeing more demand. All of a sudden we've seen, changes in demand even on the consumer level. And for the hospitals, I think the medical industry now is experiencing, there is a lot of investment that will be happening in healthcare, because of the new, unfortunately, the new trends influenced by COVID, right? So, a few years ago, I was working with healthcare basically chain in one of the countries, and where they were looking to actually, they're looking for technology to enable the experience of basically disinfecting different areas, and also just kind of some sort of device that would detect if certain bacteria is still present basically on patient beds, for example, so things like that. So what used to be just really it was interesting. It was one of the use cases a customer was looking into, and they were looking to make their facilities work better with higher standards. But now it all of a sudden became a global challenge and something that everybody will be investing more into, to create such devices, such experiences to basically disinfect not only, certain hard areas, but also to disinfect basically just the air and detect basically what's, is there any bacteria, that harmful bacteria that is still there. right? So this type of things, you know, it's just going to be on the level of the company really just looking at, so what's new, where, how do we reprioritize? And in one of my slides, I you know, I added that reprioritization is what is a big trend that's happening right now on the level of each company. So this is what we thought, you know, what our strategies are for the year, and this is where we plan to invest, but things have changed. So let's now rethink everything and just see, you know, where the needs are, where the market is going, where the demand is, and how can we, you know, reprioritize our resources and investment to meet the demand.
Thank you so much, Alla, for answering all of our questions. We'll open the floor once more for our participants if they have any other questions. Mikhail, can you ask our Russian side if they have any questions as well? We'll open the floor now to anyone. You can unmute yourselves and go ahead and ask your question yourself, or you can put it inside the chat box. No, Alla, I think your presentation was so informative and to the point, with each slide being so descriptive, that I think it answered all our questions. Thank you so much for your great and wonderful presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. You know, I hope you can derive value from that and, you know, get some ideas on how you can transform your businesses. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening and day.
Once again, participants you can connect with Alla. She has put her email here in the chat box, so you can send her a direct question, comment, or any commentary about the presentation, or if you'd simply like to connect with Alla, right? And if you'd like to network, you can definitely send out an email to her. She's placed it there in the chat box. Thank you once again. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.